So you're thinking about getting a tracking device for your pet. And one of the devices that you're thinking of using is the Apple AirTag. But you want to find out more about the AirTag, the range, the precision tracking, battery life, before you make your decision on whether it's the right device for you and your pet. Now, 12 months ago, I would have told you not to bother with an AirTag as a tracking device for pets. But earlier this year, January 2026, Apple launched the Generation 2 AirTag with much improved functionality, including longer range and greater accuracy, and a host of other upgrades, potentially making the Apple AirTag 2 a groundbreaker within the pet tracking industry. Come on, Teal. Keen to find out more? Then watch the rest of this video. Okay, before I go on to talk about the device itself, I just want to cover Apple's official statement when it comes to using AirTags to track pets. Now, back in January 2026, when the next generation AirTag was launched, the accompanying press statement clearly states, a few paragraphs down, that the device has not been designed for tracking people or pets. So in plain English, what that means to you, the pet owner, is if you do decide to use an AirTag to track your pet and you're not happy with its performance, well, you can't go back to Apple and have a whinge, because they will simply say, well, we've already told you it's not designed for that purpose. That said, it would appear that hundreds of thousands of people are using AirTags to track their pets, because the whole industry has grown up around this new AirTag of manufacturers producing collars and harnesses that have built-in AirTag holders. So clearly, lots of people are choosing to use AirTags to track their pets. So I think we should find out more about the device, don't you? So here it is, the second generation AirTag, weighing in at 11.8 grams, just 1 gram heavier than the original AirTag. And the only way you can tell the difference between the two is this AirTag has the word Find My written in capital letters on the silver casing. If you're not familiar with the AirTag, then let me give you something to compare it to. It's about the same size and slightly heavier than a 50p piece. And if you're viewing this video in the US, it's exactly the same size and weight as a $1 coin. Now let's compare it to a standard GPS tracker. And this is one of the first generation trackers. As you can see, the GPS tracker is much bigger, it's bulkier, and is usually at least twice the weight. However, the biggest shortcoming of a GPS tracker is battery power, because when you switch this device across to LifeTrack, which is what is needed to find a lost pet, you're lucky if you get 48 hours of power, after which the device simply dies. Now, I have a major problem with that short battery life, because in my experience, when cats go missing, they feel vulnerable, so they go to ground, they hide in or under a structure on deep undergrowth, making it impossible for you to receive a GPS signal, and they'll stay hidden for up to a week. What that means is when your cat emerges from its hiding space, your GPS tracker will have no battery. It's as much use as an ashtray on a motorbike. That's where the Apple device really comes into its own, because with these devices, you get 12 months of battery power. How does Apple do that? Well, it all comes down to the technology that Apple use in their AirTags. The AirTag is not a GPS tracker. Instead, it operates on the Bluetooth Low Energy network. And every 1.5 to 2 seconds, the AirTag emits a low energy pulse that is picked up by any compatible Apple device that's in range of that AirTag. This enables the owner of the AirTag to go onto the Find My network and see where their AirTag is located. There is, however, one major flaw in this type of network system, which is if there are no compatible Apple devices in range of the AirTag, then the position of the AirTag is not shared across the network. That means if you live in a very remote area, then you may find that the AirTag is not for you. However, there are ways around this, because if your AirTag attached to your cat or dog comes unpaired from your Apple device, i.e. you lose contact with it, if you then get your friends and family across with their Apple devices, you can form a search party to go through the area where you think your pet is, and eventually one of those Apple devices should become within range of the AirTag. Okay, so now we move on to the important part of the video, which is establishing exactly what this new AirTag can do. Now, what I'm going to do is ask for two volunteers to come forward, a cat and a dog. The cat is Arthur, who you may have seen in other videos, and the dog will be Teal, my field spaniel. And I'm going to conduct field trials for each of these two animals, so you get some understanding of what this AirTag can do and its limitations. For the field trial with Teal, I was concerned primarily with Bluetooth range. So what I did was I went to a cricket pitch on the Surrey-Sussex border, and I mapped out a distance of 200 feet using these flags that are 50 feet apart. I then stood directly in front of Teal, linked both my iPhone and my Apple Watch to his AirTag, and set off at a steady pace in the opposite direction. And as you can see, I reached a distance of 340 feet before his AirTag disconnected from both of my Apple devices. And I repeated this on 5 separate occasions, and on each occasion acquired a distance of between 340 and 350 feet. What I did next is I turned back towards Teal and walked in a steady direction, waiting for one of my 2 Apple devices to reconnect with his AirTag. When I reached a distance of 160 feet, my Apple Watch and my iPhone both reconnected with his AirTag. The Find My app then guided me back to his exact location, and I also repeated this trial on 5 occasions, and on each occasion I achieved a distance of between 160 and 170 feet. For the cat field trial, I'm using one of these specially designed collars that has a rubber clasp that holds the AirTag in place, like so, and I position the AirTag beneath the cat's chin. For the cat tracking field trial, I was concerned primarily with tracking accuracy. So what I did was I hid Arthur in light cover. I then walked 250 feet away from that location, turned back towards where Arthur was hidden, and walked steadily in that direction. As you can see, when I reached a distance of 160 feet, both my Apple devices reconnected with Arthur's AirTag. And then when I reached a distance of 140 feet, the precision finding software clicked into place and guided me precisely to Arthur's location. And I also repeated this trial on 5 other occasions, and on each occasion I was getting the same distances between 160 and 140 feet. And there it is. And of course I could now activate the chime, which will give me the precise location of the missing cat if it was deeper into the undergrowth. So my field trials have produced some pretty strong results. I really like that extended Bluetooth range of between 150 and 300 feet, although that's likely to come down if you lose contact with your pet in light or heavy cover. But you can counter that by simply inviting other people to join your search with compatible Apple devices. I'm particularly impressed though with the Bluetooth range and the accuracy for a cat that's hiding in light cover. Those are really good results. However, and there's always a however, I encourage you to get your own AirTag and do your own field trials. Get an understanding of how the AirTag performs in your particular area. So before I finish, I just want to touch upon one last subject, and that's how the security features of the AirTag actually help reunite missing cats with their owners. In the last 5 years, I've seen a significant increase in the number of accidental transportation of cats, which is primarily due to people changing their purchasing habits, so there's more delivery vehicles going into cats' territories. If an AirTag is separated from its paired device and that AirTag is moving, it will start to emit messages to any other Apple devices in range and Android phones, telling that person that there's an unknown tracking device traveling with them. So all the driver needs to do is to stop and investigate, and they should find the cat trapped in their vehicle and reunite it with their owner. But there's a second backup, which is if an AirTag is separated from its paired device for a set period, and Apple have been a bit coy again on how long that period is, it will start to emit its chime. This means that if a cat jumps out into a warehouse operation and hides somewhere within that warehouse, the chime should alert people within the warehouse, and when they investigate, they should find the missing cat and again reunite it with their owner. So it's a win-win situation for both cats and their owners. Okay, so I now think you have all the information you need to make an informed decision on whether the Apple AirTag Next Generation is the right device for you and your pet. But let me know how you get on. I'll see you soon.